This case taught me that silence can be a kind of guilt. I almost let authority intimidate me into looking the other way. Something told me this wasn't going to end with a simple fine and a handshake. Tuesday morning, 10:15 a.m., Providence Municipal Court. My bailiff, Martinez, positioned himself closer to the bench than usual. When Martinez moves closer, it means trouble's coming through that door. My clerk, Eleanor, had knocked on my office door 20 minutes earlier. "Judge," she said, and I could see the concern in her face, "this 10:15 case, you're going to want to read the file twice." I had. The file was thick, 37 pages of complaints, internal memos, and witness statements. 3 separate complainants, all employees of the Providence Police Department, all telling similar stories. All too afraid to speak publicly until now. Chief Raymond Kowalski walked in like he owned the building. 28 years on the force, built like a linebacker who never stopped training. His uniform was pressed so sharp it looked like armor, with enough brass and ribbons to stock a military surplus store. But it wasn't his appearance that made my stomach turn. It was the way everyone in the room shifted when he entered. Even my own court staff seemed smaller somehow. The charges were serious. 3 counts of official misconduct, 2 counts of intimidation of witnesses, 1 count of obstruction of justice. But watching him survey the courtroom like he was inspecting troops, I knew we were dealing with something deeper than criminal charges. We were dealing with a man who had never been told no. His lawyer was Thomas Brennan from Brennan, Shapiro and Associates, the kind of downtown firm that charges by the syllable. Expensive suit, expensive briefcase, expensive confidence. Your Honor, Brennan began. My client has served this community with distinction for nearly 3 decades. He's been decorated 7 times, including the Medal of Valor for his actions during the 1998 warehouse fire that saved 3 lives. These allegations stem from a disgruntled former officer with an axe to grind and a history of false complaints. I looked at the file again. 3 separate complainants. Different dates, different incidents, same pattern. "Mr. Brennan," I said, "I've read the charges. Let's focus on the facts. Chief Kowalski, do you understand the nature of these charges against you?" "I understand them, Judge. I also understand they're complete garbage." His voice had that edge, the kind that made people step aside on sidewalks and avoid eye contact. The kind that said he was used to being the most dangerous person in any room. "But not in my courtroom. You'll address this court with respect," I said. "These are serious allegations. 3 separate employees of your department have filed complaints alleging intimidation and retaliation. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor. And frankly, I'm insulted that these complaints were even filed. These people don't understand the pressure of running a police department in today's world." I flipped to the first complaint. Maria Santos, dispatch operator, 12 years with the department, mother of 2, no prior disciplinary issues. Her statement was 2 pages of careful language that barely contained her fear. Ms. Santos alleges that on March 15th of this year, you confronted her in the dispatch center and told her, quote, "If you report those missing evidence logs, remember that accidents happen to people who don't mind their business." Did you have that conversation? Judge, with respect, Maria Santos has been a problem since day one. Always stirring up trouble, always complaining about procedures, always questioning authority. She's got a chip on her shoulder because she was passed over for a supervisor position last year. That's not what I asked you, Chief. Did you tell her that accidents happen to people who don't mind their business? His lawyer touched his arm. A warning. Kowalski shook him off like he was swatting a fly. "Look, Your Honor, you've never walked a beat. You've never had to make life or death decisions with incomplete information. You don't understand the pressures we face out there every day. Sometimes you have to be firm with people who don't understand how things work. Sometimes you have to speak their language." I felt the room shift. Even my court reporter, Mrs. Patterson, stopped typing for a second. In all my years on the bench, I'd never heard a defendant so casually admit to intimidation. "Are you telling me you threatened her?" "I'm telling you I run a tight ship, Judge. Always have. People respect that. People know that when I give an order, There's a reason for it. Maria Santos needed to understand that questioning my methods has consequences. Consequences? I asked. What kind of consequences? His lips curled into something that might have been a smile if it had any warmth in it. The kind that make people think twice before causing trouble. I turned to the second complaint. Officer Daniel Mitchell, 8 years on the force, decorated twice, no disciplinary issues until he filed a report about missing drug seizure money. Officer Mitchell states that on April 3rd, you called him into your office and told him, quote, "Guys who ask too many questions sometimes find themselves working security at shopping malls instead of carrying a badge." Did you say that? Kowalski's jaw tightened. I watched his hands clench and unclench on the defense table. Mitchell was a whiner, Judge. Couldn't handle the job, couldn't handle taking orders, couldn't understand that sometimes the needs of the department come before individual concerns. I did him a favor suggesting he might be happier in a different line of work. So you did threaten his career. I don't threaten anyone, Judge. I don't have to threaten people. I make suggestions based on my professional assessment of their suitability for police work. That's when I saw it clearly, that cold calculation behind his eyes. This wasn't a man who lost his temper and made mistakes. This was a man who used fear as a management tool and believed his badge made him untouchable. And what was your professional assessment based on? Based on the fact that he was questioning the chain of command. In police work, Judge, questioning your superior's orders can get people killed. I was protecting my officers by making it clear that discipline matters. I flipped to the third complaint. Sergeant Lisa Chen, 15-year veteran, military background, spotless record until she filed a sexual harassment report that mysteriously disappeared from HR files. Sergeant Chen alleges that on April 18th, you cornered her in the evidence room and told her that her upcoming promotion review would depend on her, quote, attitude adjustment and willingness to be a team player. What's your response to that? Chen's got an active imagination. Always has. Reads too many books, watches too much TV. Look, Judge, he leaned forward, and I caught something in his eyes that made me grip the edge of my bench. Something that said he thought this whole proceeding was beneath him. Let me explain something to you. I've been protecting this city since before you put on that robe. I know every street, every criminal, every threat. I know which politicians are dirty, which lawyers can be bought, which judges will fold when the pressure gets real. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I've got 3 Bronze Stars from my military service, 7 departmental commendations, and a Medal of Valor. The people in my department follow my orders because they know I keep them alive. They know that when the bullets start flying and the politicians start running, I'm the one who stands between this city and chaos. His lawyer was whispering frantically now, but Kowalski was beyond listening. Sometimes that means making hard decisions. Sometimes that means people get their feelings hurt. Sometimes that means reminding people that questioning my authority undermines the entire chain of command that keeps this city safe. The room got so quiet I could hear the old radiator clicking in the corner. Are you finished? I asked. No, Judge, I'm not. He stood up. His lawyer tried to pull him back down, but Kowalski shrugged him off like he was a child. You know what your problem is? You sit up there in your nice, safe courtroom, making judgments about men who do the real work. You've never had to kick down a door not knowing what's on the other side. You've never had to make split-second decisions with someone's life hanging in the balance. You've never had to choose between following some bureaucratic rule written by politicians and protecting innocent people. My hands were flat on the bench. I could feel my pulse in my throat, but my voice stayed level. Chief, I'm going to ask you to sit down and let your attorney know. The word cut through the air like a blade. I'm tired of sitting down. I'm tired of being polite. I'm tired of pretending that people who've never worn a badge understand what it takes to keep this city from burning down. He took a step toward the bench. Martinez shifted, his hand moving instinctively toward his radio. So when some pencil pusher like Santos starts questioning how I run my department, or when some rookie like Mitchell starts poking around in things he doesn't understand, or when he glanced at the file, when some ambitious sergeant like Chen starts making noise about hurt feelings, Forgive me if I don't lose sleep over their comfort. Chief Kowalski, I'm not finished. His voice bounced off the walls. You want to know what I told these people? I told them the truth. I told Santos that people who cause problems for the department sometimes find themselves facing bigger problems. I told Mitchell that cops who can't follow orders don't stay cops for long. And I told Chen that her future in my department depended on her ability to remember who signs her paychecks. That's when he said it. The moment that changed everything. See, here's the thing, Your Honor. I am the law in this city. When people dial 911, they're calling me. When they need protection from the animals out there, they need me. When there's a crisis, when there's danger, when the politicians are hiding and the lawyers are cowering, they call me. For a moment, the entire courtroom held its breath. Even the radiator stopped clicking. So yeah, I expect a certain amount of respect. I expect people to understand that my authority isn't negotiable. And if people can't handle that, if they can't handle being part of something bigger than their individual feelings, then they can find another line of work. I'd been a judge for over 30 years. I'd seen every kind of arrogance, every type of criminal, every variety of delusion. But this was different. This was a man telling me, in my own courtroom, that he answered to no one but himself. I thought about my father, who taught me that real authority comes from service, not intimidation. Who showed me that power without accountability is just tyranny with a uniform. Chief Kowalski, I said quietly, did you just tell this court that you are the law? I said what I said, Judge. And I meant every word. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see Mrs. Patterson's hands frozen over her stenograph machine. I could see the prosecutor sitting forward in his chair. I could see Martinez's hand resting on his radio. Sit down, I said. Excuse me. Sit down. Now. You know what, Judge? I don't think I will. His lawyer was on his feet now, grabbing Kowalski's arm. But the chief brushed him off like he was swatting a mosquito. Maybe it's time someone explained to you how things really work around here. You can sit up there in your fancy robe and play God all you want. But at the end of the day, when the lights go out and the bad guys come out to play, it's my people who keep this city from burning down. Not you. Not your fancy courtroom. Not your pretty speeches about justice and accountability. Me. He pointed at his chest with his thumb. When there's a hostage situation, they don't call you. When there's a riot, they don't call you. When some gangbanger is shooting up a playground, they don't call you. They call me. Because I'm the one who gets results. I'm the one who makes the hard choices. I'm the one who keeps the peace. I looked at the prosecutor. District Attorney Rebecca Walsh, 20 years of experience, never lost a corruption case. Ms. Walsh, do you have an arrest warrant prepared for contempt of court? Yes, Your Honor. Good. I turned to my bailiff. Martinez. Yes, Judge. Please place Chief Kowalski under arrest for contempt of this court. For the first time since he'd walked into the room, Kowalski looked genuinely surprised. You can't do that. I just did. Martinez stepped toward him, handcuffs ready. Kowalski's hand went instinctively to his hip. 30 years of muscle memory. But his service weapon wasn't there. Court policy required all firearms to be secured before entering. This is a joke, he said, but his voice had changed. The swagger was gone, replaced by something smaller and more desperate. Is it? I asked. You just confessed, in open court, to intimidating witnesses. You admitted to threatening officers who filed legitimate reports. You told this court that you consider yourself above the law. That's not a joke, Chief. That's a crime. Martinez approached with the cuffs. For a moment, I thought Kowalski might resist. I watched his muscles tense, saw him calculate his options. But even through his arrogance, some part of him still understood that assaulting a bailiff in a courthouse would end his career permanently. Furthermore, I continued, based on the evidence presented today and your own admissions, I'm finding probable cause exists on all charges. Bail is hereby set at $50,000 cash. His expensive lawyer was frantically shuffling papers. Your Honor, This is highly irregular. My client was simply, "What's irregular, Mr. Brennan?" is a chief of police telling a judge that he is the law. In 30 years on this bench, I've seen armed robbers, drug dealers, murderers, and con artists. But I've never seen someone confess to abuse of power and then demand respect for it. The handcuffs clicked shut around Kowalski's wrists. The same steel cuffs he'd probably put on hundreds of people over his career. He stared at them like they were some alien technology he couldn't understand. "You're making a mistake, Judge," he said as Martinez led him toward the door. "You have no idea the kind of enemies you're making. You don't understand the forces you're playing with." I stood up. The whole courtroom stood with me. "Chief Kowalski," I called after him. "The only force I'm playing with is the law. And in this courtroom, that's the only force that matters." As the door closed behind him, I heard him telling his lawyer, "This won't stick. I've got friends. I've got connections. You'll see. This will all disappear by tomorrow." But it didn't disappear. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Attorney General Patricia Hendricks. "Judge Caprio? I've been following the Kowalski case. My office has been investigating corruption in the Providence Police Department for 8 months. We've been waiting for someone brave enough to come forward publicly. What can you tell me?" "Enough to make your morning look like the tip of an iceberg. We have evidence of evidence tampering, witness intimidation, theft of seized assets, and a pattern of retaliation that goes back years. Your courtroom proceedings today just gave us the corroboration we needed." Within 48 hours, state police had raided Kowalski's home and office. They found the missing evidence logs in his personal safe, along with $47,000 in cash from drug seizures that had never been properly logged. They found copies of personnel files on officers who had questioned his methods. They found recordings, actual recordings, of phone conversations where he discussed handling problem employees. Within a week, 3 more officers had been arrested. 2 lieutenants and a captain, all part of what the newspapers called Kowalski's inner circle. The department was placed under federal oversight. An outside consulting firm was brought in to review procedures and rebuild community trust. Maria Santos was promoted to dispatch supervisor and given a formal commendation for her courage in speaking up. Officer Mitchell was reinstated and transferred to the Internal Affairs Division. Sergeant Chen not only got her promotion but was eventually appointed to head the department's new Ethics and Accountability Unit. As for Chief Kowalski, his federal trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone recordings, financial records, witness testimony from a dozen officers who finally felt safe to speak. His own words from my courtroom were played for the jury 17 times. He was convicted on 14 federal charges including conspiracy, civil rights violations, and racketeering. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $230,000 in restitution. The next month, federal investigators revealed that Kowalski's corruption had affected dozens of cases over 5 years. 37 convictions were eventually overturned, people who had been failed by the very system meant to protect them. At one of those hearings, a young man named Marcus Williams approached me afterward. He'd spent 2 years in prison based on planted evidence. "Judge," he said, "what you did that day, standing up to someone with that much power, it gave me hope that justice still means something." That's what stayed with me. Not the headlines or commendations, but the idea that standing up to corruption helped restore faith in the system for people who had lost hope. I kept one newspaper clipping from that day in my courtroom. The headline read, "Police Chief Arrested After Claiming to Be Above the Law in Court." But the part that meant the most to me was a quote from Maria Santos in the article. "For 12 years, she said, I thought no one would believe me. I thought his word would always be worth more than mine. Judge Caprio showed me that the law protects everyone equally, even from the people who are supposed to enforce it. That's what justice looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but equal. One law for everyone, enforced fairly, without favor or fear. I'm Frank Caprio. Remember, sometimes the best judgment is not in the book, it's in your heart." Thanks for listening, and God bless.